everyone. Good morning. We are going to get started in a few seconds, but as we're waiting, if you could use the Q&A feature in Zoom and the comment feature in YouTube to share where you're joining us from this morning and your grade level, it would be great to know who's joining us to learn a little bit about Bushel Boy Farm. So please use that Q&A. We'll get started really quick. All right, welcome first graders from Isanti Primary School. We have JFK Elementary in Lakeville, Minnesota joining us. South Point Elementary in East Grand Forks. Ms. Zitzo, excited to have you guys with us, along with many other classrooms. We're so excited that you're joining us on this January 12th, one of the first Fridays we have school here in January. So good morning, everyone. My name is Sue Knott. I'm an education specialist with the Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom program. And my coworker, my colleague, Carrie Seidel, is doing our technology today. So thanks, Carrie, for making this all work. And we are just really glad that you're with us. One thing I want to note before we jump into our virtual field trip is that we have the Q&A feature in Zoom and also the comment section in YouTube. And we really, really are excited to hear from you and want to know what questions you have for our host. So please use that. And teachers, if you could include names of your students who are asking questions, it's always fun to use those when we're talking to our host. So I see a few more folks use the Q&A. We have Professor Steph's class from Lake Elmo Elementary, Spanish students from fifth graders, third grade from Woodbury Elementary, Miss Ritchie's fourth graders in Pierce, South Dakota. We're glad you're with us, and many others. So I'm going to dive in and introduce you to Chuck Tryon. He's the president of Bushel Boy Farms, and we are going to travel virtually to Owatonna, Minnesota. There's Chuck waving at us. And we're going to start with one of our favorite things here in Minnesota to talk about, especially on a winter day. Chuck, what is the weather like in Owatonna today?
Well, good morning, Sue. Good morning, everybody out there. It is, as you would expect, super cold. It is about 10 degrees and dropping, and it is starting to snow really hard outside.
Okay, I am in Chaska, Minnesota. It has not started snowing here, but it is definitely cold. Now, Chuck, but you're going to tell us about how Bushel Boy Farms grows tomatoes and strawberries. How is that possible on a cold, snowy day in Minnesota?
Yeah, really good question. So we are actually in a large greenhouse. And what I mean by a greenhouse is it's a great big structure really built out of glass. Excuse me. You can start to see as my camera operator, Emily Andes, who is our head of research and innovation, is spinning around. You'll start to see parts of the greenhouse. It's like a great big, almost like a warehouse, all glass so that light comes in, but also so that we can add extra light. So you might see some lights on the ceiling. You'll see some rails on the floor. Those rails actually have hot water running through them. So that's what keeps this greenhouse warm. Even on the coldest of days, even this weekend when it's going to be below zero, this greenhouse will be the same temperature it is right now, which is, it's about 75 degrees. I actually have a little bit of sweat, and it's not because I'm nervous. It's just because it's nice and warm and humid in this greenhouse.
All right, thanks, Chuck. So while you tell us a little bit about the greenhouse and Bushel Boy in general and yourself, we're going to show a quick map that shows exactly where you are. But Chuck, why don't you tell us a little bit about Bushel Boy and what's going on here in Owatonna and the rest of Bushel Boy?
Yeah, great. So we're a large greenhouse operation in Owatonna. Owatonna is about an hour drive south of the Twin Cities, and if you would keep going south for about another half an hour, you'd reach the state of Iowa. So we're in southern Minnesota. The business, this farm was originally started about 32 years ago as one small greenhouse. We now have 9 greenhouses on our property, and the one that we're in right now is about, we measure things in acres sometimes, and it's about 4.5 acres. But to put that in a better reference, that would hold 3 football fields. And we have 9 of these greenhouses in Owatonna. So 3 football fields times 9 greenhouses. We could have 27 football fields if we didn't want to grow strawberries and tomatoes, but we don't want to play football. We want to grow strawberries and tomatoes.
Well, I'm glad that you do want to grow strawberries and tomatoes because I think they are delicious. So, Chuck, tell us how these greenhouses provide what those plants need to grow.
Yeah, so plants are a lot like all of the students out there right now. We need some basic things. We need a place to live or a place to sort of plant our roots. And if we were growing something outside in the summertime, we'd plant our roots in the dirt outside. In a greenhouse, we plant our roots in not in dirt or soil, but in a material that holds the roots. We happen to use something that is actually ground up coconut shells. And I'll just expose a little bit of this if you can start to see. So this is ground up coconut shells. It's not dirt. It doesn't provide any nutrients to the plants. It just allows them to have a place to plant their roots or their feet. So that's the first thing they need is a home. The second thing they need is, like us, they need water, they need food. And that comes from these little tubes here. These are little irrigation tubes. So water runs through this just like a straw. And then it dips right into the plants and it gets all of the water. And then in the water, we dissolve nutrients. So all the food that the plants need come through the water. So that's the second thing they need. The third, I mentioned heat. They need to stay warm in the wintertime. So we have different ways of providing heat. We get heat from these pipes on the ground. And we'll kind of show you these pipes are like a railroad track. And we actually have carts that run up and down them. People follow them. And then we also have tubes that run, if you can see my hand, that run along the plants where the fruit is growing. Yes, I said fruit, that's a tomato that you actually see there. And most people think of tomatoes as a vegetable, but they're not, they're a fruit. So that hot water runs through those pipes as well. So we get heat from the bottom, heat right where the plants need it the most. And then we try not to let that heat escape. You guys might know that heat rises, and we have a glass roof, and that glass roof isn't very well insulated in the wintertime. So you might be able to make out that we've got a little bit of shade covering or screens, and those screens are like a blanket. So just like you'll put a blanket on if you're cold in your house, these screens operate like a blanket, and they keep some of that heat in. So it's more efficient. It's better for the environment for us to not have to produce as much heat to keep this place warm. So that's the third thing. And then the fourth, they need light. Again, just like you and I need light. And we get that light from the sun. That's where we prefer to get most of it. But during the winter, where the length of the day is a lot shorter, there's just not as much daylight, not as much sunlight. So then we have to add extra light. So we have lights on our ceiling as well, and those give the plants some extra light, which is what they'll also need to grow. So again, just like you and I, we need a place to live. We need water and food and heat and warmth and light, and that's what we give these plants all year round in Minnesota. And grow all these wonderful fruits and vegetables.
That is fantastic, Chuck. We have a few different questions. So there's a few students that are curious about the coconut shells. So Ashlyn and Reese are wondering why you use coconut shells and if it's better than dirt.
It is different than dirt. There's kind of good things and bad things about all types of materials. The coconut shell works because we don't need dirt, and we want to keep soil on the earth in our farm fields, in our land. So we don't want to bring soil and take soil away from the earth. We do want to use things that are very sustainable. So coconut shells. So if you think about eating coconut, you guys all know that coconut's kind of white and flaky, but that hard outer shell typically is just thrown away. And so a better use for it is for us to have it ground up and then brought into the greenhouse, and so that we can actually plant in it. So all we need it to do is provide a home for the roots of these plants. So it's more friendly to the environment, and it uses something that otherwise didn't have a use.
Awesome. Okay, Miss Allard's class in Brainerd, welcome to you guys. Allie in her class is wondering about the heat. So how hot can it get in your greenhouse before it affects the plants and they might die?
So it's a really good question. So in the wintertime, we don't have any problem at all because it's so cold outside that we're able to heat it to just the right temperature for the plants. So around 72, 75. All the plants are a little bit different. In the summertime, it gets really hot. We don't cool these greenhouses off. So in the summertime, the greenhouse, if you just think about if you were inside of a building that was mostly made of glass in the summer, you would know it would get hot. We have windows on the roof that we open up, and that lets some of the hot air out. We have fans that circulate air to help keep it a little bit cooler. We sort of add misting kind of water into the air, and the effect of the water when it gets misted is to reduce the temperature a little bit. So it can get to 100 degrees on really hot days. That does start to affect the plants, but quite honestly, what it really affects is the people. It's really hard to work when it's that hot. So we have to give everybody a lot more breaks, make sure that they get lots of water when they're working and have a chance to cool off. So it affects the plants a little bit in the hottest time of the summer, but it really affects the people more.
That makes sense. Okay, we have a few questions about the specific foods that you're growing. So first, Briggs from Lakeville is wondering if the strawberries you grow are sweet. And I don't know, Emily, camera person Emily, if you can get us a close-up of some of those strawberries. And Chuck, if you want to tell us about this
Yeah.
variety of strawberries and what they taste like, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so this variety of strawberry is, to answer Rick's question, is it sweet? Yes, it is the sweetest strawberry that you'll be able to find anywhere. It's sweet for a couple of reasons. The variety is naturally sweet. It's a variety that we call Albion. A lot of places that grow in the summertime in particular. If you were able to go to a place where you could pick your own strawberries, this is a very similar strawberry to what they pick, what they grow. But it's also very sweet because we pick these strawberries exactly when they're ripe, when they're at their best, kind of best tasting, sweetest moment. And we do that because we're growing them here locally. We don't have to send them very far to get to the store that's that's by you. So if you're shopping, if your family's shopping at the Hy-Vee in Lakeville, you'll see these strawberries there, and what we picked today, they would actually be delivered to a store tomorrow morning. So that keeps them really sweet. If we were growing these really, really far away, if we were in California or Mexico and we'd have to take 2 days or even 3 days for them to arrive at the store, we would have to pick them when they were much more green. And they would eventually turn a little bit red, but that sweet flavor wouldn't develop. So these are the sweetest strawberries you can get. You can get them all year round, just like the ones that you would pick yourself in the summertime.
Fantastic. Okay, well, while we're looking at these strawberries, there's a few questions about how strawberries grow and why they look a little bit different than the tomatoes. So Chuck, can you tell us some things about growing strawberries? And I saw there was some little flowers. You have some special guests, I know, in your greenhouse that help with that process.
Yeah, so the strawberry plants are they're much more shorter and compact. They don't grow on a great big vine, which we'll show you in a few minutes with tomatoes. So they're more of a compact plant. The flowers that you see, the white flowers that you see all across the top, those are what will become the next strawberries. So those flowers will get pollinated. So bees that we have flying throughout the greenhouse, the bees will fly and land on those flowers, and they'll land on that flower about 25 times. And in the course of doing that, that fully pollinates that flower, and that flower will then become a fruit that gets set, and that flower then turns into the strawberry.
Awesome. So Anders in Miss Zitzau's class is wondering how long does it take for the strawberry plant to produce fruit?
Really good question. So they produce, after we plant them to begin with, about 8 weeks. And then once they start producing, and I'll give you, so the plants that you're looking at that my partner Emily is showing you, those plants were planted toward the end of the summer last year. They started producing shortly after you guys started classes in the fall. And they'll produce these same plants, they'll keep producing strawberries until about the time you guys are getting ready to have your summer vacation. So they'll last almost about 9 months long. They'll be producing strawberries in this greenhouse.
Awesome. So that's another question. Students are curious how many plants you have and how many strawberries they produce.
So we number of, let me give you the number of strawberries. I think that's the most fun stat. We've got we've got about 100,000 plants in here. We have in the strawberries that we have in here take up about half of this greenhouse. And if you remember, I said this holds about 3 football fields, so about a football field and a half of strawberries. So 100,000 plants. They will produce about 6 million strawberries during this school year. Let's call it that. And there just so happens to be about 6 million people, yourselves included, that live in Minnesota. So this half of this greenhouse will produce 1 strawberry for every person living in Minnesota.
That's amazing. Okay, that's some good numbers there, students tuning in. So that we had a bunch of questions about strawberries. We also have a bunch about tomatoes. So Shayla, for example, is wondering why you choose to grow tomatoes and not something else in your greenhouses.
A couple reasons. Whether you like tomatoes or not, a lot of people love tomatoes. There is such a demand for fresh tomatoes, particularly grown year round, particularly local. So people just love tomatoes, and we grow all types, big tomatoes, small tomatoes, different colors of tomatoes. So that's the first reason. It is the first thing that Bushel Boy ever grew. And so when Bushel Boy started 32 years ago, the first thing they grew was tomatoes. So that's what we've done for about the first 28 years. And then since that time, we've been growing other things, but tomatoes really is what we're known for the most and what we grow the most of.
And Heather Winblad's class or students are curious, what are the different types of tomatoes you grow and what is your favorite kind?
Great question. So we grow the big tomatoes we grow. One is called a beefsteak tomato. So that's a big individual tomato that you might slice and use on a sandwich or on a hamburger. We also grow tomatoes that are called vine-on tomatoes. So it'd be a group of larger tomatoes that would be a cluster of 3 or 4 that you'd buy in the store. And those are used for a lot of different reasons, really, really good flavors. It can be used in salads. They can be used to cook with. And then we grow smaller, what we would call snacking tomatoes. So tomatoes that you might have in your lunch, tomatoes that you might have in a salad. And there's 2 main types. There's one called a grape tomato, and it's called a grape tomato if Emily's going to drive us close to one. You can see these tomatoes. They're sort of oval shaped, and they're really shaped more like a grape would be. So that's one type, and then the other type would be called a cherry tomato. Really, the difference, there is a flavor difference, but it's the shape. A cherry tomato would be much more round, like a cherry would be.
All right, awesome.
Oh, and my favorite, to answer that question, my favorite would be the grape tomatoes that we're in right now. I like them because they're such a good size. You can eat one all at one time. The trick with these types of tomatoes are if you bite them in half, you have to watch out with the person next to you, because they might spray tomato pulp and seeds next to your neighbor sitting with you in the lunchroom. I like to eat them all at once. That way it doesn't burst and get all over my shirt or my neighbor.
That's a great warning for us. Okay, so it seems like you're a little bit taller than you were before, Chuck. Do you want to tell us what sort of equipment you're using? And that also leads to a few different questions. Students are curious about how tall these tomato plants are.
Yeah, so we're going up right now. We're on a lift. That lift is on those rails that I talked about earlier that act like a little railroad track. The cart that we're on is a hydraulic lift. So it lifts us up. It's battery operated. It's called a scissor lift, which we can't really show you the underside, but the legs of it open and close like scissors would open. And so we're going down one of our aisles right now. We are at the top of what we call the canopy. So the canopy is the very top of the plants. And right now I would say we're probably at about 12 feet. That would be meaning if I was playing basketball right now, the basketball hoop would be down by my feet. So I'm above the height of a basketball hoop is where the tops of these tomatoes are. And the vines, we keep moving them because they keep growing. They grow almost a foot every week. So every week that they grow, we have to keep them at the same height. So we just lower them a little bit and move them around a little bit. We take care as we're going through this. You can see someone across from us right now. This is one of our team members who's making sure that the plant is exactly the way we want it, so that the right amount of tomatoes develop and that the tomatoes get the right amount of light that comes through.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think it was either Chuck, you or Emily was showing us some of the flowers of the tomato plants. They're yellow. And that led me to want to ask you a couple questions that students have. Sloan specifically is wondering how many bees live in your greenhouses and if you have beehives.
We do have beehives. We can show you as we get out of here. The number of bees is always hard for me to estimate. And when I get asked this question, my normal answer is I don't know, because they don't stop long enough for us to count them. And so we have hives on every single row that we're in. Those beehives operate. The bees are out in the morning. They start there just like a lot of us. They start their work early in the morning. They will fly around the greenhouse throughout the day, landing on each of the flowers. So in this case, you see the tomato flowers are yellow. So they'll land on those flowers, and that will pollinate the fruits and turn these yellow flowers into the grape tomatoes that you see. The bees will do that all day, and then at night they remember what hive they were in, and they'll return to that exact same hive every night, rest, and then they start again the next morning.
Awesome. Okay, man, how fast are you able to travel in that lift? It looks like you're going quick.
We are going pretty fast. It's not very fast in miles per hour, but yes, it moves relatively fast. You might be able to see if the camera's showing. This is one of our beehives.
Yes, we can see that.
Actually,
yep.
The little blue tab is open. That allows the bees to fly in and out. And again, they generally fly out in the morning and do their work. They're very well trained. We don't have to tell them what to do. They know exactly by nature that they're going to fly around and pollinate and then return at the end.
Awesome.
And then interestingly, and this is always fun when our favorite FedEx or UPS driver arrives, these hives arrive to us by UPS. And so our driver gets to come out with lots of boxes that might be buzzing a little bit. And sometimes that is shocking when it's a new UPS driver.
That would be shocking, I suppose, but exciting also. Okay, Chuck, we have a bunch of different questions. Ruby, Vivian, and others are curious about the people who work in your greenhouse. So can you tell us how many people work there and what are some of the different jobs? And also, I lost who asked this, but they're curious about why you're wearing a hairnet and a white coat.
Good question. So we have the total number of employees, because we actually have a second site in Iowa, in Mason City, Iowa. So in Owatonna, we have about 130 employees who are working here, doing all types of jobs in the greenhouse, in our warehouse, in our office. They drive our tomatoes to the stores. And then we have about 70 employees and team members in Iowa. So a total of about 200 people in southern Minnesota and northern Iowa are working here.
And tell us why you need to wear the hairnet and the white coat.
So it's really important from a food safety standpoint, and also from a plant safety. So we wear hairnets, we wear coats. Emily, if you want to show my feet are covered with covers that protect, so that anything that might have been outside doesn't come inside into the greenhouse. And there could be diseases that affect plants that might be outside that we don't want to bring inside to the greenhouse. So before I joined this call, I had to put all of this what we call protective personal protective equipment on. So hairnet, a coat, covers of my shoes. I had to thoroughly wash my hands with a special soap before I came in here, and then we'll do the same when we leave. We don't reuse all of this. We'll throw the shoe covers and the hairnet away. We launder the coat. We'll wash our hands again before we go into another greenhouse. So all for food safety reasons, but also for plant safety, for the reasons of keeping these plants really healthy.
That makes sense. So Mrs. Westrom's class is curious if the people working in the greenhouse ever just get to eat some of the strawberries and tomatoes.
They they don't when they're in the greenhouse. That's a really good question. And they don't because it's also it's more of a food safety and again just a plant safety standpoint. So we do allow and offer the employees to take products home with them, and they can eat them at home. But in the greenhouse, this is sort of a hands-off approach to we want these to be healthy. We don't want to contaminate anything, so we can't eat anything as it's growing. But once it's packed, we can have people take things home with us. And then, as always, we like not only the folks that are out watching this, your families, but our own employees. We like to buy our products in the stores. We love seeing them in the produce department at our favorite local store. So we're really happy and have a lot of people who work here who know the care that goes into growing them and really knows how good they are.
So that makes me curious or want to eat these products as well. And there's been a few questions about the labels. So if you were to go to your, local grocery store, would it say Bushel Boy on these products so we know that they would be coming from your greenhouses?
Yeah, it would. So if they're in a small package like these, the grape tomatoes that we just showed you, those would be in a small package, and they would have the Bushel Boy logo. They'll have our they'll say Owatonna, Minnesota on them. If they're a larger tomato that's not in a package, it'll have a little sticker on it, and that sticker will say Bushel Boy. It might have, some of them have the outline of the state of Minnesota that will show up on them. So yes, you will see them in store. The other thing I'd say is, and this is really, I know I wasn't supposed to assign homework to anybody that's out there, but if you're looking for a fun project to do over the next couple of weeks, go grocery shopping with your mom or dad. Go through the produce department, and the produce department is where all the fresh fruits and vegetables are, and just look not just for our products, but look at things that look interesting to you, and it'll tell you in the store where they're grown. It might be another state, it might be another country, and then maybe do a little curious work and find out what it's like in those places where it's grown. So if something's grown in Minnesota, or if it's grown in Peru. Do some work on, I wonder what it's like there. I wonder where is Peru? What are things like there, and who are the farmers? Because what's really unique with fresh fruits and vegetables is these aren't factories, these are farms, and farms take farmers. And so everybody you see here doing work, they're all farmers. And so understanding where your food comes from, things that are interesting about those places, and then learn about the people that might be doing those jobs, the people that are the farmers.
I think that's a great homework assignment, Chuck. Thank you. Emily, I think you were just showing, is that one of the scissors lifts that you guys were using a few minutes ago?
It is, yes. Yeah, so if you see the green bottom, those metal pieces expand, and they really expand, kind of like scissors would open up. So they have a pivot kind of in the middle, and it allows them to open and raise higher and lower.
Awesome. Okay, a few more questions and then our time is up. Mrs. Ritchie's class is curious if your tomatoes and strawberries and other products get shipped all over the United States or the world.
They don't, and they don't because we don't want them to. And I'll explain that why. The reason why we're growing this in 0-degree temperatures in January is we want to sell everything we do locally. We want to grow them so that they're fresh, they're at their most optimal taste and flavor and nutrition. So we sell them really in the Midwest. So if you're drawing a bullseye, and if you use the Twin Cities as the bullseye, we ship to about a 400-mile radius. So the furthest we would go to the east is Chicago. The furthest we would go to west would be the western edges of North and South Dakota. And then we go sometimes as far south as Kansas City, Missouri, and up to the very top of the state of Minnesota.
Awesome. Okay, we have time for just a couple more questions, actually two. So these are about you, Chuck. So Christian is curious why you wanted to start and work on a tomato farm. And Kai is curious why you wanted to have the farm in Owatonna, Minnesota.
Yeah, so I'll answer Christian's question first. So I've been around food and fresh produce since I can remember. My dad actually worked in the produce industry for most of his career, and so it's all I really knew growing up was food and fresh produce. And so when I finished high school, when I went to college, and I went on to kind of further in college, as soon as I left school, I started working in the food industry, and I worked on vegetables. If anyone's ever had a vegetable from the brand Green Giant, which makes canned and frozen and some fresh vegetables, that's where I started my professional career. And I just love food, Christian. It's what I really love to do. So I've been with Bushel Boy for almost 4 years. But have spent my entire time working on food products, trying to get people the best, most nutritious, delicious products that they can get. And then I think it was Kai that had the second question of why Owatonna. So the original founder of Bushel Boy, a gentleman by the name of Jay Johnson, lived in Owatonna, Minnesota. And in the early 1990s, so I think around 1991, he decided that he thought there was an opportunity for the same flavor or same experience that people would get by having a tomato grown in their backyard in the summertime. If they could get that in January, he thought that would be a really good business idea. So he lived in Owatonna, which is why it started in Owatonna. So that's where he built his first greenhouse. And so that's the reason for this location. And it really is a great location where we've got a really good employees who live down here in this area, and it's Owatonna, and we get people from a town called Faribault and Albert Lee. So we have a really good location for some just incredible team members who work with us every day.
Well, thank you, Chuck. That was so awesome. And thank you, Emily, camerawoman Emily, for showing us that scissors lift. I think that was really cool to see as well. And thank you, teachers and students, for joining us. I apologize, some of your questions we just don't have time to answer, but thank you for asking them. And thank you for joining us today. We're so glad that you were curious and wanted to learn more about Bushel Boy. Chuck, thank you so much for being a fantastic host and showing us all around and answering all the questions. I hope everybody has a fantastic afternoon and a great weekend. And while you're outside playing in the snow and kind of chilly, you can think about these tomatoes and strawberries who are nice and warm and growing well at Bushel Boy Farm. So thanks again, Chuck. Thank you, everyone.